Hi, thanks, Robin, for joining our conversation today to educate and to put an end to commercial octopus farming. So, to kick off, tell me a little bit about yourself, and I mean just a little bit. We have a lot to talk about today,
Okay.
and how you got involved in this very important topic.
Thank you so much, Karen, and welcome to Aracha Animal International's Octopus Afternoon. We're an arts-focused animal advocacy nonprofit using the incandescence of art, stories, poetry, film, visual arts, and music to inspire behavioral and cultural changes in a multi-species universe. I've always been drawn to the watery part of the world, as it says in Moby Dick, a book I first read in my late teens and have never truly gotten off the Pequod. In a novel where only men are part of the action, one of the most gorgeously spellbinding chapters in a most dazzling book is called The Grand Armada, which centers upon the matriarchal society of mother whales floating on their side, rapturously nursing their newborn calves in a moment of calm so arresting and witnessed by these men with an utterly rapt attention in a kind of shared watery communion among different species, amid the otherwise violent and gruesome commercial whaling industry. And it's so captivating for its profound appreciation of nature. Melville's reverence for whales, not as resources, the finest sperm oil, or as demons, but as subjects of their own majestic lives, devoted nursing mothers and their children. No more prescient writer foretold climate catastrophe and species extinction than Melville, with his tale of plunder and hubris and the exploitation of nature.
Whales are such magnificent mammals. What a great example you just used with Melville. Now, how can we create a Melville whale story as it relates to the threat to octopuses?
A while ago, an article appeared before me called A Whale Taught Me How to Live by award-winning filmmaker, director Daniel Kreitzberg, about an orca mother known as Tahlequah, who gave birth to a baby calf who tragically died shortly thereafter. The mother, mourning her anguishing loss, transfixed viewers around the world by carrying her baby across the Salish Sea for 17 days, something that never happened before. And Daniel was so moved by the unfolding spectacle that he created an animated short, which has played all over the world, called Tahlequah the Whale, dedicated to Tahlequah and her baby. The film's subtitle, A Dance of Grief, speaks also to those whom we love and lost too soon.
Oh, amazing. I truly believe animated films are really, they're just a very powerful way to educate people, especially on these very difficult topics. So is this what compelled you to want to make a film about commercial octopus farming?
Absolutely. I wrote Daniel immediately, asking if he wanted to make a film about octopuses, inspired by my reading Simon Montgomery's Soul of an Octopus in 2015, and one of our most urgent campaigns. Daniel responded within a day that yes, he was very interested. A series of fascinating conversations followed.
Wow, that's exciting. What an amazing background. So smart to reach out to Daniel.
Absolutely.
So tell me more about how we can expand our education to help you make this film.
We need to raise awareness for the need for our animated octopus film that Aracha Animal International and Daniel are envisioning. It's a terribly critical moment because we have a breathtaking opportunity with a work of art, our film, to stop something before it is an entrenched part of the system, before it is a profit-making enterprise, before it gets to the marketplace as a luxury product, which it is. And it is indeed very rare to have a chance at stopping something so monstrous and unthinkable. This would be an appalling example of a large-scale factory farm treatment of yet another species, the Octopus vulgaris. Once it's in, and there's no stopping it. And we are determined with our upcoming animated short, which will feature a vibrant orchestral sound and great emotional intensity, to help stop the world's first industrial octopus farming before it begins, before it sets a dangerous precedent the world over, bringing with it the looming massacre of millions of octopuses. Other countries such as Japan, China, Greece, New Zealand, Australia, among others, are already starting experimental octopus farms.
I'd say this would not be a very good precedent to set. So to help us understand the commercial threat, can you provide us with one area of focus or maybe one company that is most complicit with this threat?
Absolutely. It's Nueva Pescanova, the vast global seafood company, which has plans to start the first industrial commercial farming on Spain's Gran Canaria island of up to 1 million octopuses a year. A fast-growing species of mostly solitary, complex, playful, staggeringly brainy beings confined en masse in tanks who would be desperate to escape such forbidding confinement. In 2019, Nueva Pescanova made known that it had successfully bred octopuses in captivity and has since been studying how to transfer mass production fish farming methods to octopuses. The 1,000-tank facility is projected to produce 3,000 tons of octopus meat a year.
Oh, that's just not acceptable. I think I'm going to go out and bust them out of there. So it's quite appalling that this is even being considered. So tell us more about how they live in their natural environment and about the ecological impact of the marine animals potentially being farmed. So what is the threat to our overall ecosystem if these corporations move forward with farming?
Octopuses live in caves and keep a den, walking around at the bottom of the ocean or seafloor. And this is really crucial. They are carnivores, requiring feeding them other animals. Especially if you farm carnivorous animals, they put additional pressure on the oceans because we must catch fish to feed them, which can then lead to the extinguishing of related wild species and the decimation of ecosystems and environmental degradation. As with all aquaculture, only much more so, octopus farming will pump ammonia-rich waste products, they excrete ammonia, back into the bay with calamitous effect on the immediate aqua environment. So the ethical, environmental, and ecological implications are vast, exacerbating an already vulnerable marine environment, fueling harmful algae blooms. These extraordinary invertebrates can't be immunized, which means the parasites that afflict them will then spread between them and into the water. Dr. Jennifer Jaquette and her co-authors in 2019 published a groundbreaking article, The Case Against Octopus Farming, which argued octopuses are particularly ill-suited to a life in captivity and mass production for reasons both ethical and ecological. Confinement is especially cruel for animals with such, quote, sophisticated nervous systems and large brains, unquote, who are capable of mimicry, play, sophisticated navigation and hunting strategies, and what Jaquette calls meaningful lives. Agriculture boosters don't take into account how rich the intertidal zone is, she said, referring to the profusely varied habitat where common octopus species forage. And she said they can't reproduce that. And of course, they are killed in ghastly ways. Dr. Jaquette wonders that the more you think about it, we must ask ourselves why we would do this in the 21st century to an animal the world is in love with. From living their fascinating octopus lives, they will suddenly find themselves imprisoned in a tormenting solitary confinement, which is essentially torture.
In the words of Keri Tietge of Eurogroup for Animals,
these complex, inquisitive, intelligent, mostly solitary, and light-averse animals will be kept in crowded, barren, completely artificial tanks and exposed to 24-hour periods of constant light, she said. She added that octopuses could become aggressive and turn toward cannibalism or self-mutilation. We also know they are prone to injuries in aquaculture tanks due to their fragile skin and absence of any internal or external skeleton for protection. So when you say octopuses, I think we just naturally smile, right? You say the word, and every story about encountering them up close is one of sublime exhilaration. They bring so much joy, and they lend themselves visually, poetically, almost romantically, in such a singular fashion, such a glorious strangeness, yet so familiar, living in the grip of a wild elsewhere. There have been remarkable discoveries also about them, such as though they have a reputation for being solitary, they also enjoy being sociable with others. So octopuses who delight in play can also be caring and nurturing and even collaborate with other species to hunt for food. And I find this amazing. A fish will point out prey, and the octopus will use their arms to force the unfortunate prey out from under rocks. They have been known to possess dialects, and they have sung to one another. And maybe most remarkably, they recognize individuals of other species.
Wow. That kind of proves their intelligence, right?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
how they can relate to other species. Help us understand their genetics, right? So can you explain their biology and how it compares to us as humans?
So according to Erecha's Richard Darwin, octopuses have a stunning 33,000 genes, which not only makes their genetic code far more complex than any other invertebrate, but it's about 10,000 more genes than are contained in human DNA. Though we do share 879 genes, the all-important, the jumping genes, crucial for environmental adaptation. There has been talk of an exceptional level of sensory consciousness, a so-called fifth spectrum frequency of brainwave, which translates to, simply expressed, otherworldly smart. Octopuses have chromatophores that contain pigment coloration, which they instantly blend like paints for their legendary camouflage to communicate and scare away predators. Many marvel that they are the only aquacultured species who can walk on land, and they seamlessly blend into the background. In fact, it is their genius at disguise that exemplifies octopus sentience. Octopuses don't just change their color to match nearby coral. When hiding from predators, they camouflage themselves by imitating its texture and shape, too. I mean, I find that wild. Professor Peter Shea believes they see three-dimensional shapes and that they can gear their camouflage toward what they regard as the viewer, implying awareness of perspective.
Wow, amazing, right?
Yes.
The more you learn.
Yes, and in fact, they're magicians and perform astonishing feats, like being the most wonderful of mothers, literally devoted to their young to their last breath, or like Tahlequah, not able to let go. And here is a fascinating story on Radiolab about a crew on a boat in Monterey Bay dropping a robot sub with a camera and getting to know an octopus who was sweeping across the sea floor toward a rock. A month later, she was sitting on a clutch of eggs, her arms covering all 160 eggs, the size of jelly beans, they said. They called her Octomom, and a fierce Octomom at that, protecting her eggs from hovering crab and shrimp who would love nothing better than to have a tasty snack. The mystery was the length of time for the eggs to hatch for such deep water octopuses. I mean, it's unheard of. For 5 years, she cleaned and protected, not feeding as octopuses are wont not to do while brooding. In fact, starving to death, the tragedy of octopuses dying after reproducing. She wasn't even tempted by a crab leg offered from the robot, and in fact, heroically fought off all the crabs about to pounce on her jelly beans, as the crew called her eggs. And protect she does until the last little bean is hatched when she succumbs. The crew returned to find crawling baby octopuses. Quote, "Relax, Mom, it's over. You did your job. It's the handing off the baton of life," they said. End quote. An exquisitely sad and beautiful end protecting her jelly beans.
What a dedicated mom. She's absolutely my new role model. I would say most of us can relate to how she cared for her jelly beans. So it makes me think the world just needs more education. So your animated film will be a huge value, right, in providing people with the insight into why farming these marine animals is just criminal.
I couldn't agree more. And imagine for a moment what the world would look like without these sophisticated invertebrates, these shape-shifting tricksters of the sea. Will we know the moment when it happened? In a world of our obsessively relentless overfishing and vast aquaculture, we might indeed find out. But the choices we make, where we choose to invest our time, our funds, and our care, will ultimately decide their fate. So your direct support of our upcoming animated film will allow us to help stop the absolute madness of octopus farming ever being realized. Instead, offering a way forward for what we could do for other marine species and other animals we are fast extinguishing. It's urgent we help stop octopus farming from ever becoming the tragedy that will befall us. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you, Robin, for this incredible education on octopus farming. We must stop it. At all costs, we must stop it. And for those listening, we really appreciate you joining us on this journey, this movement. We understand how difficult the topic is, but your involvement and your presence is really incredibly important and appreciated by our organization, Haruka Animal International. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Robin, who's going to introduce you to additional educational videos.
The following are videos from award-winning artists and activists illuminating further the threat of octopus farming and aquaculture. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Meet Keri Tietge, Aquatic Animals Policy Officer with Eurogroup for Animals, with whom Arucha collaborated for World Octopus Day, October 2024. As the Pan-European Animal Protection Organization, the primary focus of Eurogroup for Animals is to work in the interest of animals toward a society in which they are valued and respected as sentient beings. The umbrella organization provides advice and expertise on animal welfare to various European institutions, such as the European Commission, the Council of the European Union, and the European Parliament. It also acts as the secretariat of the European Parliamentary Intergroup on the welfare and conservation of animals, which meets at the European Parliament in Strasbourg for regular sessions.
Hi everyone, I'm Keri Tietge, Aquatic Animals Project Officer at Eurogroup for Animals, and I'm thrilled to be part of this special event today hosted by Aruka Animal International. As you immerse yourselves in this powerful artistic and sensory experience, I want to take you beneath the surface into the real-world story of our fight to stop octopus farming in Europe. Eurogroup for Animals is a pan-European umbrella organization that was founded in 1980 and now represents more than 100 different member organizations, all working in animal protection at the EU level. Recently, to mark World Octopus Day in 2024, we joined forces with our Spanish member organizations, Anima Naturalis, Animal Welfare Observatory, Compassion World Farming, as well as several other partners in the heart of Madrid to protest the plans to build the world's first commercial octopus farm in the Canary Islands. This is a project proposed by Spanish seafood giant Nueva Pescanova. They want to farm 1 million octopuses per year. But octopuses are solitary, intelligent, and emotionally complex animals. Forcing them into crowded tanks would lead to suffering, aggression, and likely even cannibalism. And the proposed slaughter method, immersion in ice slurry, would lead to slow and painful deaths. It's already being phased out of aquaculture for several other species because it's known to be an inhumane method. Farming octopuses wouldn't just be a welfare nightmare, it would also be a disaster for the environment. Octopuses are carnivores. They would need to be fed with huge amounts of fish meal, which is produced from wild-caught fish that are already under massive fishing pressure. The planned farm would also discharge potentially toxic waste into the ocean, just 800 meters away from a marine protected area. It's an industry that simply should not exist. And the good news is, we're fighting back. Public opposition is growing fast, from Madrid to Brussels. Over 100 scientists have signed a letter urging the EU to reject octopus farming, and more than 1 million people have added their names to an Avaz petition demanding that these plans be stopped. It's working. Plans to open the first octopus farm have been delayed already. The Canary Islands government rejected Nueva Pescanova's initial simplified environmental impact assessment. Instead, they now are requiring the company to submit a second, much more thorough one. In Spain, one of our members just submitted a legislative proposal to parliamentarians there, which would ban octopus aquaculture and the sale of farmed octopus products. Our hope is that this proposal will now be formally submitted to the Spanish Parliament soon for its approval. We are also calling for an EU-wide ban on octopus farming and the import of farmed octopus products. Thanks to Aruka and everyone at this event, this message is reaching new hearts and minds through art, music, and powerful storytelling. Together, we can stop this industry before it begins. Let's stop octopus farming.
For Aruka's artist-in-residence, music has the power to arouse emotions and reveal underlying stories in still imagery. Noam harnesses this power to tell the stories of animals and nature in unique graphic musical scores. His signature notation style is an homage to J.S. Bach's glorious handwritten scores, which he has taken as a foundation and transformed it into a drawing style using calligraphy nibs and ink, allowing the result to both reflect an image and function as a musical score. The breadth of feeling he experiences when observing, interacting with, touching, and caring for animals is his biggest inspiration, a kind of shared communion. The music staves are his canvas, and the beams and stems of the notes are his brushstrokes through which he tells the stories of wondrous, mysterious, magnificent, beautiful, and soulful animals.
Art, in all its mediums, whether a painting, photograph, literature, film, animation, music, allows us to imagine again, to understand in a new way alternate realities, possibilities. It inspires critical thinking and the deepest of emotions and is essential for cultural transformation. To behold an octopus in her glorious, multi-armed, preternatural wonder, her indelible singularity is enchantment, bewitching and humbling, the observer observed. What makes these individuals so singular? A kind of rapture, a profound attentiveness, mutual curiosity, the beckoning of an alternate yet familiar consciousness, seeing and being, knowing and known. Is it this, the unmistakable echo of recognition, why we connect so emotionally to them? These impressive sea gardeners, tool users, tricksters of camouflage, problem solvers, inquiring touchers, escape artists, evolved to imagine, to dream. Octopuses, with their staggering intelligence, are the only invertebrate species to make the list of the Cambridge Declaration of Consciousness. The poetry of fluidity, how they move through water. Shapeshifter, reaching, feeling, stirring the depths of our soul. Nueva Pescanova, the global seafood company, in a move of reckless profiteering, has plans to start the first industrial farming of octopuses, gulags of up to 1 million sentient beings each year imprisoned en masse in tanks at the port of Gran Canaria, with the terrifying prospect of far-reaching calamitous ethical, environmental, and ecological catastrophes associated with concentrated aquaculture and the decimation of ecosystems. The incandescence of art can rouse kinship, to stand in alliance and protest the oceans of suffering of other species, to sound the alarm at the indifferent, mindless cruelty, the precipitous diminution of the lives of more than human animals, upon whom the most appalling cruelties are visited, in barely known worlds where life precariously clings. Noam Oxman is renowned for his unique approach to art, creating animal portraits using musical notation that forms exquisite musical compositions. His innovative fusion of art forms has gained widespread recognition, with features in major media outlets and international TV networks. Noam is a passionate animal advocate, and he uses his art to promote his message of compassion for animals and nature. This is his tribute, Tiny Liquid Ballerina. His musical piece is an homage to one of the planet's most wondrous and mysterious individuals, the glorious octopus. While composing the piece, he imagined a little octopus, smaller than the palm of his hand, curiously reaching her arm to investigate an object, maybe the tip of Noam's finger. Then suddenly, hopping away playfully to continue her graceful dance of floating, twisting, and shape-changing, like a tiny liquid ballerina. Stop octopus farming.
Laura Jean McKay was a guest at Aurukha's online showcase called Revealing Hidden Worlds: Art, Animals, and Advocacy. Laura is an Australian author whose The Animals in That Country was the winner of the prestigious Arthur C. Clarke Award, the Victorian Prize for Literature, the ABIA Small Publishers Adult Book of the Year, and co-winner of the Aurealis Award for Best Science Fiction Novel 2021. Gunflower, her collection of stories, which The Guardian called virtuosic, was named one of Reading's Best Books of 2023 and among The Guardian's Best Fiction of 2023.
Hello, my name is Laura Jean McKay, and I'm so honoured to be part of this important campaign about octopus lives. I write about all sorts of animals in my books, The Animals in That Country and Gunflower, but I'm going to read a newer short story called Fish. It's from a compilation called The Griffith Review in Australia, and this is a story about a world where mer creatures exist and they are very popular to catch as a sport. This is an excerpt of this story. A wave rises up and he sees it. The emerald arc sluicing through the clear water. A big fish, all right, and his line holding the end of it. He lets it out, the crank whizzing so fast he'll never get a hold of it again, but he does, puts his knees into the pullback. The confusion of the creature against the strain. It's darting out there, unsure whether to go forwards or back. What is pain? What is freedom? It's all at the end of his line and foaming. Where before he felt the strength of the fish, now he feels its insecurity. He takes it. The tide with him and against the big fish. When it turns, he reels it in, glimpses again the green tail as it sweeps closer, keeping the long rod's difference between them. They bite. Even a juvenile will use tactics to prevent being hauled in. They wedge their tails deep in the sand, raise up their top halves, so disconcertingly familiar, out of the water. He's glad there are no rocks out here. They've been known to wrap themselves around anything they can find, preferring to get their throats ripped out than to be hauled up. He admires that. It doesn't do to think about what goes on in the crude boats, or what a lonely or drunk fisherman will do with a big fish. Across the turbulent shallows of the sandbar, there's a lagoon. He uses the momentum of the incoming tide to drag the fish across the sandy ridge until it flops in the shallows almost gratefully. Must seem like escape, that thigh-deep water. The big fish streaks out, a quiver of green in the crystal blue. He lets out the line to where the lagoon gets shallow again and the creature has to pause, disoriented. Make sure he's got a good hold of the pole. It wouldn't do to lose the big fish now. Chasing it and his best rod down the estuary with the kids and the whole beach laughing. He catches another glimpse of the tail sweeping out of the water, that emerald bash of scale against the blue. Not as big as he would have liked, but still, his heart comes up short. There's a small crowd of kids on the beach now, and he can see Kate wandering over, Richie close behind. He slowly drags the fish through the water, making sure he doesn't rip more of its throat with the hook. His grandchildren and others from the camp hover at the edge of the lagoon, tapping each other on the arm to say, Look at the big fish." He whistles to get their attention. "You ready?" he asks. They nod. "You sure?" They wriggle, gaze up at him, grinning. He gives a final tug upwards. The water sucks. The big fish rises out of it, whirling. He gets hold of the trailing moss-like scruff. It lets out a wail, the sound made for long calls underwater. Car tires on a quiet street, but with that wail-deep note that haunts, gets in your head. At night he hears them. They cry for each other in the currents, have been known to court, to play. He winds his hand around the hair and pulls. The fish gives a screech so human that the kids back away a little. Then it sets to whimpering. This is a small female, flat and with hardly a curve to its tail. He can see from the markings on its chest as it flips and writhes. It's too small. He'll have to throw it back, but he's glad now there's kids everywhere. He hasn't brought out one of the adults. The females, with their developed chests and teeth sharpened to points on rocks. The ovally muscular males who roar and charge, their twin shark penises and their giant tails. Even undersized, this fish is half the length of his body, and he needs to catch the middle to support the weight. He grins as he brings the female thrashing towards him, sees how the massive hook has lodged good and deep in the throat and come clean out the fragile neck. He edges down onto his knees and eases the big fish across his lap. It's still long calling, a neat row of gills along what look like shoulders. He dunks its top half in the water where its gills and mouth take in great gulps. Thank you.
Our South Korean collaborator is the founder and chief executive officer of AWARE, Animal Welfare Advocacy, Research and Education, a non-profit organization established to improve public policy and animal welfare standards in South Korea. In addition to advocating for wild animals in captivity, she has led policy advocacy campaigns and research for farmed animals, animals used in research, companion animals in shelters, and free-living wildlife such as invasive alien species. She is a committee member at the National Committee for the Management of Zoos and Aquariums, as well as on the Seoul City Animal Welfare Advisory Committee. She also serves as a consultant to the National Assembly's Animal Welfare Forum. She has received a ministerial award from the Ministry of Environment, 2020, and from the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs, 2022, for contributions to improving animal welfare policy. Hyung has published 4 books and writes as a regular contributor for newspapers and magazines, including the Korea Times. Her book, Sipping Tears of Palm Civets, How Our Everyday Choices Affect Animals, 2016, has received the Award for Contents of Excellence by the Korea Culture and Art Foundation and the Award for Environment Book of the Year.
Hi, my name is Hyung. I'm the founder and executive director of AWARE. We are a nonprofit organization dedicated to improving animal welfare policies in South Korea. An octopus is a sentient being recognized for its remarkable intelligence and emotional complexity. Many scientific studies have demonstrated that octopuses not only experience and remember pain, but they are also capable of learning through observation, using tools, and even solving puzzles. Unfortunately, there are increasing proposals around the world to farm octopuses, and South Korea is no exception. And 산낙지, which is live small octopuses, often boiled or cut on the table before being served, is considered as a delicacy. However, eating live animals is not part of our culture or tradition, and we all know that cultural practices cannot be an excuse for inhumane treatment of animals. Our current legal system does not provide protection for invertebrate, and we are advocating for change in this area. Octopus is a wild species, and labeling another species as a farm animal is outdated, inhumane, and entirely unnecessary. So we thank Aruka Animal International for speaking up for this incredible species. They have our full support, and I hope you all do the same. Thank you.
Jonathan Balcombe was born in England and raised in Canada, where he now lives. He has loved animals since age 3, when he decided he wanted to be a hippopotamus. Instead, he became a biologist with a PhD in the study of animal behavior. During a career focused on animal protection, he developed and taught courses in animal behavior and animal sentience for the Veritas Graduate Institute and Humane Society University, and served as associate editor to the open access journal Animal Sentience. His main focus these days is researching and writing books, which include Pleasurable Kingdom, Second Nature, The Exultant Ark, and What a Fish Knows, a New York Times bestseller available in 17 languages. His latest book for grown-ups, Superfly, won the National Outdoor Book Award for Natural History Literature. His first children's book, Jake and Ava, A Boy and a Fish, was published in 2021. He is currently writing a book that explores cooperation and joy in the wild. In his spare time, Jonathan enjoys biking, hiking, birding, baking, snorkeling, and trying to understand the neighborhood squirrels.
So I'm going to now just go to the share screen, and then I can start my 4.5-hour lecture on fishes. We generally think of fishes as in one of two contexts, either as a source of food or as a source of recreation. Tonight in this presentation, I want to invite you to view fishes through an entirely different lens. We've grossly underestimated them. They're so much more complex and varied than we thought. And we've treated them abysmally. We malign them more than any other vertebrate, which is probably in keeping with the fact that we think that they're dim-witted and cold-blooded and all these demeaning characteristics. So I'm going to try and impress upon you in about 20, 25 minutes that there's so much more to fishes than we thought. And these would be primarily highlights from my book, What a Fish Knows, which was mentioned in the introduction. But first, I want to impress upon you how diverse fishes are. We actually live in an age of fishes. They're an incredibly successful group. There are more kinds of fishes than there are all other vertebrates combined. Birds, mammals, reptiles, and amphibians combined. And this is just a small sampling of the variety that you find, the incredible range of shapes and sizes and colors. They're quite beautiful creatures, evolved to be mostly streamlined to move efficiently through a more viscous medium, that being water. And I want to point out there's two major kinds of fishes. We lump them all together with the word fishes because they basically kind of look the same. But the two groups, the bony fishes, which are all the ones here except for two in the upper left, the electric ray and the shark, they're cartilaginous fishes or chondrichthyes. Those two groups of fishes are as different from each other as birds are from mammals, and yet we do just sort of lump them together, which is fine for basic purposes, but they are very different from each other. And I want to just share a few superlatives about fishes. The smallest known vertebrate on Earth is this little minnow from Philippine lakes. It's so small that you could put 300 adults on one side of a scale and an American penny on the other side, and the penny would go down. 300 adults weigh less than a penny, so that's how tiny they are. And yet all this incredible complexity packed into those tiny bodies. The nervous system, the reproductive system, digestive system, excretory system, endocrine system, all the systems of life that we have. And they're all arranged into that tiny body. I always marvel at how nature is an incredibly gifted at miniaturizing things. The oldest known vertebrate is a fish, is a shark, the Greenland shark. Based on studies of corneal layers laid down in the eyes, a little bit like the way trees lay down rings, and you can count the rings to estimate a tree's age. So there are some Greenland sharks that are estimated to be over 300 and possibly over 500 years old. So there may be some who were swimming around in the oceans before Shakespeare even started writing his plays, and they're still alive today. Quite remarkable feat, if you ask me. These sharks have to be 130, 140 years old before they even reach sexual maturity. So you can imagine they're quite vulnerable. If we kill them, we lose a lot of the time that takes them to get to that stage where they can even just reproduce. The longest name of a fish that I'm aware of goes to the Hawaiian reef triggerfish, who the locals call the humu humu nuku nuku apua'a, which apparently translates to the fish who grunts like a pig and sews with a needle. Don't ask me where that comes from, but fishes do make a lot of sounds. So grunts like a pig is probably a good descriptor of how they can make a sound. My nominee for the most suitably named fish goes to this diagonal banded sweet lips. And when I look at those lips, I must say they do look pretty kissable to me. But moving on to aspects about fishes that we don't know, that we only discovered recently, I want to give a few examples of their intelligence and their perceptiveness. This is a little frill-finned goby, a quite attractive little fish, quite well camouflaged, and they live in the intertidal zone between the shore and the ocean, where the waves come in at high tide and where they go out at low tide. And it's been observed that they can jump accurately from one tide pool to another, which is very useful if you're trying to escape an octopus or a heron or some other predator who might have spied you in the shallows. And they can jump, plopping into neighboring pools and work their way out to the open ocean if they have to. Now, how do they do it? How do they know which way to jump? How do they know how to avoid making a leap of faith and ending up stranded on the rocks? Well, it turns out that they memorize. They memorize in their little minds, their little brains, they memorize the topography of the reef at high tide. So when the water comes in, they swim over this topography and they memorize. They make what's called a mental map of the area. So they know, based on the depressions, where the neighboring pools are at low tide. And they're able to use that sort of aerial view at high tide into a horizontal view at low tide to calculate and make these accurate jumps. It's an incredible feat for a little fish. Obviously a very useful one. And there's a lesson there, because evolution tends to lead to incredible solutions for very important behaviors that benefit survival. So fishes with good mental mapping skills tend to be more likely to survive to reproductive age and produce young fishes who themselves have the genes for good mental skills. This is the basic idea of evolution by natural selection. So that's one example of the cognitive skills of a fish. Fishes also use tools. This is something that it wasn't known that other animals could do until a century or so ago, until then we thought we were the only tool users, but now we know that many other species can and do use tools. This tuskfish with a clam in his mouth already used water as a tool to blow sand off the mollusk and then carries it to another location, a specific location that the tuskfish knows because he or she has used it before, and that would be a rock or a piece of coral against which the fish, with a series of well-timed head flicks and releases, is able to eventually smash the unfortunate clam, and of course wants to get at the soft tissue inside for a meal. Note also the opportunistic bystanders or byswimmers on the left, several fishes who are watching the action. They know what's going on. They know there's going to be an opportunity for a tidbit or two. And fishes are alert, aware, and opportunistic and clever. And so they're part of the game, they're part of the scene, waiting for an opportunity to get a bit of food for themselves. Another kind of tool use is using water as a ballistic tool, which the aptly named archerfishes are named for. There's 6 known species, and they can squirt water with a barrel-like mouth shape and some strong muscles in the head. They're able to squirt water very accurately at insects, in this case, perched on leaves or flying overhead. They use different techniques depending on how far away the flying insect is. And they also, they rotate their body and shoot at the same time, directly at the prey if it's close. If it's further away, it's more like a quarterback in football, squirting the water ahead of the target, so that by the time the target gets there, provided it doesn't change directions, the water will hit the target and knock it into the water, which of course the fish is hoping to do, and then swims up to grab it. It's been shown also that these fishes can get quite proficient at this skill simply by watching others do it without having any experience themselves. That's called learning by observation, which is another considered to be a high-level cognitive skill by scientists. And because archerfishes can squirt water out of a tank, they've been used in studies where scientists present them with touchpads over the tank, such as the screen on the right, the part of this image in letter C. And for instance, one study that was done with this was to try to solve the age-old claim of aquarium fish keepers. And by the way, I'm not recommending keeping fishes in aquariums. It's got a whole host of issues and problems with it. Nevertheless, people with fishes in aquariums say that they recognize themselves. They recognize their human, the one who feeds them, that they'll see a bunch of humans and they won't take any interest. But when they walk into the room, the one who feeds them, the fish comes out waiting to say hello and hopefully get a tidbit. And so scientists presented these fishes with different faces, human faces. As you can see, they're quite similar, but they are distinctive. These are computer-generated faces, which allowed them to remove the hair on the left and even remove the ears. And these fishes would still squirt water at the one familiar face out of a group of up to 40 unfamiliar faces. So quite remarkable ability to recognize differences, subtle differences, in a species that isn't even their own. So we can only imagine how very good they are at not recognizing the faces of individuals, of their fellow archerfishes in their home habitats. I was fascinated to discover that several fish species have been tested on human optical illusions that we fall for, such as this famous Ebbinghaus illusion, in which the 2 orange dots in the middle are the same size, but because of the arrangement of gray or blue dots on the outside, the one on the right in this case looks larger than the one on the left. It's quite a powerful illusion. Well, you can train fishes to poke their noses against the larger 2 dots and then present them with the Ebbinghaus illusion. And if they're given a little food treat each time they poke against a larger dot, they would, in this case, go to the right side. Of course, you randomize it, but they would go to the right side and poke that dot on the right because they perceive, like we do, that it's larger than the one on the left. I think that's a fascinating revelation about the inner workings of a fish's mind, because it shows that the fish is not a robot. A robot doesn't have any trouble recognizing, quote unquote, that those 2 orange dots are the same size. But a flesh and blood animal with a mind and a body and emotions and feelings and judgments does fall for the illusion, just like we do. And that says a lot about a fish. It says that they have beliefs, and that also that those beliefs can be fallible, which reminds me very much of our own species. The way animals communicate is also a nice window into their minds. Here's one of my favorite examples. It's interspecies communication, a lot of which goes on in nature, where not only do species interact with members of their own species, but they also interact with members of other species. Here we have 2 sizable reef predators, a green moray eel on the bottom and a grouper fish on the top. And these 2 species will work together as a team to go hunting. The grouper invites the moray eel by doing a head shake. By the way, I should tell you that you can watch YouTube videos of most, if not all, of the phenomena that I'm talking about. There are nice little clips on YouTube, so you can put in tool using tuskfish or moray eel and grouper go fishing together, and you can watch some videos of this behavior. It's quite remarkable and impressive to see. So the grouper does a head shake, which is called a referential signal, because it's referring to something that's going to happen at a different location and a little bit later in time. And the moray eel knows that signal from the grouper, and it's an invitation to go fishing, to go hunting together, which they will typically do. And you can see them swimming over the reef like a couple of Disney characters. And if they find a suitable prey, then the prey will typically dart into a crevice in the reef to try and escape. And of course, the moray eel, being slender and long, a little bit like a ferret of the sea, is able to pursue that fish in there. And if the moray catches the fish, the moray eats the fish. And if the grouper waits out in the open water, and if the fish escapes into the open water, well, of course, the grouper is waiting to snatch the fish there. And it's been found through observational studies that they have about a 5 times greater success rate when they hunt together than if they hunt individually. So it's a very effective partnership that's built on referential communication, and referential gesturing, which is, once again, I sound like a broken record here, but it's considered to be a very high level cognitive skill. And groupers will wait up to 20 minutes or more pointing at a fish in the reef to encourage and invite the moray to come and try and help to catch that fish. There was a science writer who came up with a little jingle to describe this interaction, and it goes like this. If your prey's in a hole and you don't have a pole, fetch your moray. Maybe no one knows that song. It's a university in England. What was it called? Cambridge University. You probably heard of that. They did studies of captive fake morays that were laminated in plastic, as you can see here, that could be controlled by wires. So they could be quote unquote cooperative moray eels or uncooperative ones who didn't want to go foraging with the grouper. And they found that the next day the grouper would be discriminating about which morays they would work with. They would invite to go foraging together, and it was only the cooperative ones. So that shows that these aren't willy-nilly random invitations. These are long-term relationships built on trust over time. And again, it relates back to what we talked about earlier about individual recognition. Groupers know individual morays, and I'm sure the morays know individual groupers, and they kind of become partners and friends over long periods and can work together more efficiently that way. Perhaps the most remarkable, one of the best studied cooperative relationships or symbioses in nature is the quite famous cleaner-client relationship, mutualism on coral reefs, where so-called client fishes, in this case a pufferfish who's not puffed out, but you can see the spines around the face. They line up, the client fish, more than 100 known species, line up to wait their turn to get serviced by, in this case, a pair of blue-striped cleaner wrasses, which are the most famous of a number of different kinds of cleaners. And the cleaners, as you can see here, the client invites them into the mouth and the gills by opening the gill cover and opening the mouth. And the cleaners go into this little predator's mouth with impunity. The predator never eats them because it's not a good way to maintain good long-term business relationships, to eat your business partner. So the way it works is that the cleaners, of course, pluck off bits of algae and mostly parasites, ectoparasites and parasites that get into the gills, which are a real concern to these client fishes. And in turn, the cleaners get food, and the clients, of course, get a spa treatment and a parasite removal service. It's all very nice, but it also is Machiavellian. Sometimes the cleaners will bite off a little more than they should. They may take a little bit of mucus from the skin, which is a useful protective layer for the client fish. That doesn't make the client fish happy. And the cleaners may have their eBay ratings go down because the client fish may retaliate and chase them away. And so their reputations are at stake. And careful studies have shown that cleaner fishes tend to do a much better job when there are lots of clients in the queue, because their reputations are likely to suffer more if lots of clients see them misbehave, whereas they're more likely to misbehave if there's only 1 or 2 clients in the queue. So it's truly Machiavellian. It's complicated. There's clearly a lot of social dynamics and cognitive dynamics going on in these relationships. By and large, they are honest relationships. It's better in the long term to be honest to your partner and do the right thing, so to speak. But as we see in human society, there's a certain faction of society that may cheat or commit petty crimes or worse, of course. There are remarkable parallels here. And you can see different variations on this type of relationship in different locations around the world. This is a freshwater spring in Kenya where hippos will will spread their legs, splay their toes, open their mouths to invite fishes of various species who clean plaque and vegetation off their teeth, give them essentially a good cleaning and a spa treatment, and everybody goes home happy because one gets food and one gets a nice cleaning service. And these hippos will sometimes drift off into a blissful sleep. They clearly love getting this kind of attention foisted upon them. Now, beauty and art in fishes. What am I talking about? Is there such a thing? Could there be such a thing? Well, just looking at the beauty of some fishes, yes, there may be some other reasons for the evolution of these beautiful patterns and markings in this clown triggerfish. Beautiful name, by the way, I think almost as good as a diagonal banded sweetlips. So this clown triggerfish, and I'm sure there's many useful features to that remarkable coloration. But you have to wonder what a member of the opposite sex feels when they see this beautiful coloration. It must be a draw. And one of the theories of evolution and reproduction is that this sort of coloration would be an advertisement for fitness. It shows, look at the quality of attire that I can wear. It shows that I'm good at getting along through life. If you mate with me, you'll get good quality genes. So that's one kind of explanation for this sort of phenomenon. We look at it and we just say, look how beautiful that is. And I'm sure we're not the only ones who regard that as beautiful. This is an interesting discovery off the coast of Japan, about 80 feet deep in water. About 12, 15 years ago, a photographer named Yoji Okata, Japanese, he discovered one of these 6-foot wide kind of mandala crop circle type structures in the sand at the bottom. And he had no idea what it was. No one had ever seen this before. And since it's been filmed, they've set up cameras and you can see beautiful little segment on this on a BBC with David Attenborough narrating. It's been discovered that it's a little tiny pufferfish previously undescribed and unknown to science, the male of who spends hours building and days maintaining, because of the currents, these beautiful mandala-like structures by swimming in certain patterns, and it ends up in a lovely structure that is essentially like a fish version of the peacock's tail. It's an advertisement of his health, his vigor, his skill, his aesthetic ability, his artistry. Very attractive features. If a guy can do this and still get enough to eat and avoid being preyed upon, he's obviously a very good fellow and worth mating with. So this kind of thing is called a sexually selected trait. It's probably the product of generations and generations, thousands of generations of very particular, choosy, picky, selective, discerning females who tend to favor males who show great skill, and males who don't show that good a skill don't tend to leave as many babies. So artistic skill gets selected by evolution. And I like to think that it's not just a sort of a calculated choice by the female, but she probably maybe a fish can lose a bit of breath and be breathless with the surprise and wonderment when they see this beautiful structure. After all, it is for them and not for us, and we admire it. Now, Robin did ask me to mention octopuses. These aren't fishes technically, but of course they are marine animals, and remarkable ones for that matter. They are invertebrates, which makes them very dramatically different than the fishes in terms of their evolutionary origins. Their common ancestor probably dates back 600 million years or so. And yet we end up with a different line of animals, these mollusks, which are just so remarkable with their 8 arms and their personalities. They have tool use, they have emotions, they're brilliant escape artists, they can be playful, they can hold grudges. I remember reading of one lab where octopuses were kept in tanks, and a visiting scientist one day saw an octopus trying to escape out of the tank and banged on the lid. And from then on, that octopus held a grudge towards that particular scientist. The octopus would squirt water from the siphon at that scientist when they would walk by or come into the room, and only that scientist. And they were even known to squirt water onto his seat, his chair, so he'd get a wet bum when he sat down. So they're quite. There's much more going on in an octopus mind than we give them credit for. Here's a nice example here of a veined octopus using a tool, or 2 tools actually, a half a coconut shell on the left and a clam shell or a scallop shell on the right. A very nice combination of tools, of resources to close and hide this octopus within. And just as we do with our tools, we don't toss them away after one use. We carry them around with us, as do these octopuses. And you can see quite comical looking YouTube videos of octopuses actually walking on 2 of their 8 legs whilst holding these tools of hiding and escape with them as they go. just one small example of the remarkable abilities of these invertebrates. So science is now showing that we can't just draw a big thick line between animals with backbones and animals without them and say that the ones without them don't meet the standard that would be worthy of our moral concern and consideration. And as was said a little before I came on today, octopus farming is something that we need to be concerned about, and we need to make efforts to stop, because it's just like factory farming for vertebrate animals, and that's full of problems and moral concerns and ethical concerns. Now, what did I say there? I said emotions. So what about emotions? Just a little bit more about them. This is Mango, an 11-year-old pufferfish. It's the one on the left. And Mango is greeting his human when she comes home. Pufferfishes are predatory, so you can't really keep them with other fishes. But they have, because they have binocular vision at the front of their eyes, they have this wonderful ability to look at us in the face in a way that we recognize, and they connect with us. And when I was researching my book, What a Fish Knows, I corresponded with a number of people who, including this one, who described their interactions, the games they would play when they came home from work. The fish would swim back and forth as they ran back and forth on the other side of the glass. And sometimes some fishes would swim into the hands of the human and rest there while being stroked. And again, you can watch YouTube videos of all this stuff. Fishes actually do like a trusted touch and a massage and a caress, just like we do. And there are studies that bear that out. And in fact, I'm going to describe one in a moment. And here we go. This is a striated surgeonfish, and in a study done with researchers at the University of Lisbon, they caught about 32 or so of these fishes and then stressed them. Being caught and taken from your home on the reef in the Great Barrier Reef is stressful enough, but they put them in shallow water for 30 minutes, and you can measure stress in a fish by taking a small blood sample from the tail. And if stressed fish will show very high cortisol, which is a so-called stress hormone. So they knew these fishes were very stressed. And then what they did was they put them in one of two tanks. One tank at the top with the green box on the top is a motor, and it had a model of a cleaner wrasse. And I didn't mention this before with the cleaner-client mutualisms, but one of the ways that a cleaner wrasse will mollify an upset client is to give them caresses with the pectoral fin. So the one on the top, this one with the green box, the cleaner wrasse there, the model cleaner wrasse would sweep back and forth in a gentle sweeping motion, so the stressed fish could get caressed if he or she wanted to. And boy, did they ever want to! They would visit that moving cleaner wrasse about 15 times an hour on average. And then in the control condition in the bottom where there's no motor and that cleaner wrasse couldn't move and couldn't give caresses, they ignored it. They didn't swim up to it. They averaged 0 visits per hour. So a very, very clear difference. And it's what it essentially shows you. And the ones in the above situation, their stress levels came down much faster than the other ones who the stress level stayed up. And I'm happy to say they really they released all of these fishes back into the Great Barrier Reef when they'd done the study. Scientists don't always do that, and they don't report it, but I'm glad to say they did in this case. But the take-home message of this study is that fishes do like a gentle caress, and it can calm them down and remove stress, just as a massage can do for us at the end of a stressful week, for instance. So some remarkable parallels between their lives and ours. I'm conscious of the time. I think maybe I can still get away with 5 or 6 or 7 minutes. Just let me know if that's a problem. Virtue, very briefly. Thank you. Thanks. Virtue. What about virtue? Well, here's just one quick example of virtue in a fish. These are 4 different species of rabbit fishes, which is a reef fish that feeds on algae. When you're head down in the reef feeding on algae, you're a little bit vulnerable to a predator who could come along, and you don't see them coming because your head's down. Wouldn't it be nice to have someone looking out for you? And of course, you can see here that in every case, there's another fish of the same species head up, looking out. That fish is playing a lookout. And because that fish is not feeding, they're foregoing the reward of food, foregoing gratification, as we might say. That's a virtuous act. And of course, as you can imagine, they change places after every few minutes so that both of them get to forage in a session in much greater safety than if they were foraging alone. Humans can also show compassion and virtue towards other fishes. This is a diver on the left who's been diving with sharks for over 30 years, and some of them she's known for almost that time because, as you know now, sharks live a long time. These are gray reef sharks, and she takes customers down there in chainmail just to be safe. But these sharks will swim up to her and rest on her lap. They know who she is, Christina, and they will receive also strokes, which will get them so relaxed that they can actually remove hooks from their mouth. She's able to put her hands in their mouths and as gently as possible, although you can't be super gentle when you're trying to remove a great big fishing hook from a shark's mouth, such as this blue shark. Shortly after this photo was taken, that big hook in the shark's mouth was removed with bolt cutters, and the sharks continued swimming around for a little while. And we can only speculate, but we readily accept that that whales who we've helped out of fishing nets, tangled in fishing nets, are grateful to us. We should certainly be open to the idea that a shark can be grateful as well. These are long-lived, large-brained animals, and they certainly have emotions. The Anthropocene. I want to finish up with a little bit about our troubled and evolving relationship with fishes, because it's a very important one. Very much relates to some of the challenges of our times. Fishes have had the disadvantage of being so-called cold-blooded. Actually, some of them can control their body temperatures to quite an extent, and they're ectotherms in the sense that they can use the climate and the sun to heat their bodies up. So they're not cold-blooded all the time. Often their blood runs hot, depending on their situation. And those staring eyes, they don't need to blink because, of course, they're in water. They don't need to have an eyelid to put water over their eyes because the eyes are kept moist. But it has caused us to have some biases against them. And I have to point this out. This is pretty disturbing once you consider the numbers here. Historically, this disk would be almost entirely green, almost entirely wildlife in terms of the proportion of vertebrate animals on land. This is not including fishes, actually. This is just terrestrial, although that might look similar for fishes. But now the wildlife is down to 4%. Humans are 36%, and livestock are a whopping 60%. And of course, livestock is a category of animals whose role is for us. We sort of invented it, the idea of raising animals to eat directly. If we ate the plants directly that went into the livestock feeding, we would be much more efficient. And I think I'll mention that again in a moment. But I did want you to see these proportions, which I find alarming and disturbing, that we've reduced wildlife to just 4%, and then everything else is all about us. It's either our species or the animals we raise to eat. Little wonder then that we've seen incredible declines in both terrestrial and marine life in recent years, about a 50% decline in the last half century for marine vertebrates. And there's a number of existential threats. Of course, we all know about climate change. We know about coral bleaching, where corals lose their integrity, then they expel the symbiotic algae that have lived and evolved with them for millennia. Ocean plastic waste, mostly fishing gear, to the extent of about 620 million metric tons a year is lost or discarded. Pretty big numbers. And the insidious problem of microplastics, where tiny balls of plastics look like fish eggs, and little baby predators like the pike eat them and can't, of course, digest them and perish. But by far the biggest threat to marine life is our appetites and our appetite for eating them and catching them in astronomical numbers. Estimates from anywhere from a conservative of, say, 500 billion, yes, that's 500 billion, to possibly over 2 trillion by one estimate. We don't measure them by numbers, we measure them by weight. But based on extrapolations from that, we can ascertain that these numbers are astronomically high. And fishing, besides being cruel, because of course dying in a net is not a nice way to go. You're crushed, or you suffocate, or if you survive the net and you're dumped out on the deck, even if you survive the decompression of being raised to the surface from depth, you then suffocate, of course. This is a shrimping vessel, so this speaks to the inefficiency of fishing with nets. You have to look pretty hard to find any shrimp in here. Almost everything else is a non-target fish, which is typically dumped out onto the boat deck and discarded or wasted. So it's a terribly, not only cruel, but a wasteful way of generating food for human consumption. You've heard about aquaculture and fish farming. Well, it really is farming, where you've got large numbers of fishes who are in concentrated enclosures, and they have no control over where they go, who they mate with, if they can mate at all, how they migrate. It takes away all their freedoms, and so they don't tend to do very well. And it's sometimes said that, well, at least with aquaculture we spare the wild fishes, but actually most of the fishes raised in aquaculture operations are predatory fishes who have to be fed mostly fishes, such as the menhaden here and other so-called food fishes, which are caught in huge numbers ground up into fish meal or fish oil, and a lot of it's used in pet food and in fish food and aquaculture operations. Just a note about octopuses again, the idea of octopus farming is one that is getting a lot of news now. Spain is working towards opening a very large, the world's first octopus farming operation. So there's a great deal of protest going on to try and stop this with good reason, given what we know about octopuses and their well-being. I think I've gone on long enough. I will stop there just to finish up by just saying that we've underestimated these animals, these fishes. They are wonderful. They're varied. They're remarkable. They're not just alive. They have lives. They're not just biology. They also have biographies. Each one is a unique individual, regardless of their numbers. It's just a fact of nature. Each is unique, and we need to treat them as such with respect and consideration and compassion. And if we do that, I do believe that it will not only be a better world for them, but it'll be a better world for us.
In the future, I'd love to see streets without stray cats or dogs, plates without meat, eggs, or dairy products, chariots without horses, donkeys, or mules, labs without living test subjects, house pets that are being treated well, a world without animal abuse. I'm Noam Oxman, and I create symphonies to express my love for all kinds of animals and to raise awareness of the unfortunate reality of so many animals around the world. Join me and many others on our quest to create a better world for all who lives in it.